But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Serra Bardin, whose paper is entitled The Los Angeles Yiddish Cultural Club, Yiddish Cultural Labor in the American West from 1925 to the 1950s. Sarah is a first-year PhD student with the University of Oklahoma's History Department and the Schusterman Center for Judaic and Israel Studies. Take it away, Sarah.
Hi, thank you so much for that awesome introduction. Dina and Judy, I've learned a lot from your methods and your frameworks, and I think my paper will kind of talk to your guys's as well. I'm so glad and indebted to Dr. Caroline Luce and her work with the Los Angeles Yiddish mapping project of Boyle Heights. She talked about in her keynote speech that she ultimately made a choice of either publishing an article or doing this cultural labor required for this history, and I'm deeply indebted to her and her work. Let's get started. So, in 1951, the Los Angeles Yiddish Cultural Club, the YCC, celebrated its 25th anniversary. Los Angeles in the 1950s was changing. Far from the early 20th century, more American Jews were flocking to the city, and although LA seemed an unlikely setting for a vibrant Yiddish culture, by the 1950s it had become fertile ground for Jewish residents committed to sustaining Yiddish life. Here we don't have pictured the 25th celebration, but we do have a cultural club banquet of that same year celebrating executive member Morris Koploff. And as you can see, it's a very lively scene. Earlier in the beginning of the Yiddish Cultural Club, it's a few members, like Dr. Luce was talking about. It's a collected group of dedicated writers, but by the 1950s, it really explodes in membership and the community organization. That same year in October, YCC Secretary Aaron Aroff expressed his joy at the achievement and assuredly wrote in the Cultural Club's literary journal Heshbon, when the future historian undertakes to describe the various Jewish groups who have lived and participated actively in the Yiddish community life of Los Angeles during the past quarter of a century, he will undoubtedly award the Yiddish Cultural Club a deserving commendation. I'm very prevalent or very understanding of the gendered connotations here, but I read this quote while I was doing my master's dissertation on this work, and I felt really compelled to enter conversation with Aroff here. I don't think I am what he expected, but I was glad to really look at the Yiddish Cultural Club and give it its flowers. Um, the future looked really bright in this 1950s moment and even into the 1970s, but the heyday of the YCC was really short-lived. The organization endured until 2009, but with limited activity, declining membership, and with the death of its last president, who was a woman, Lilik Majner, the cultural club ceased to exist. There is some continuation, but really at that point it was done. But in recent years, Dr. Luce and other historians and cultural activists have committed themselves to the important work of digitizing LA Yiddish written cultural works, making local Jewish history accessible, and promoting Los Angeles' unique Jewish history. And my master's dissertation, which covers the Yiddish Cultural Club, the Yiddishist, and the Merev, really looks at the cultural club, its promotion of a distinct, specific idea of Yiddish culture and a Yiddish future, and the women who utilized the club to publish their own work. So in addition to highlighting a unique regional history, this project examines how the American West environment shaped the cultural labor required to reproduce cultural identities in new locations. By analyzing the Yiddish Cultural Club, my research illuminates how the environment and culture worked together in tandem to create a diverse American Jewish experience. We are well acquainted with Jewish American experiences based in New York and other Eastern major cities, but I was really drawn to the American West and how that environment specifically shaped Jewish experiences there. A major factor shaping these experiences of Western Jewish women writers and who published Yiddish poetry, short stories, articles, and novels was that Los Angeles lacked the same Jewish or Yiddish institutions as we see in the East Coast. These institutions are really more built on the ground up approach. They don't have the same longevity as previous institutions in the East Coast, which allows some more flexibility in how these institutions operate and who has access to them. Because this environment allowed less formalized institutions to really grow, Jewish women were able to utilize local fundraising avenues and market strategies with this cultural club to publish their work and receive credit for their literary endeavors. In short, the source base of this microhistory, because it is limited to just the cultural club, as Dr. Luce has pointed out, there are a multitudes of experiences, of Yiddish experiences in Los Angeles, but I really focused on the Yiddish Cultural Club and their specific idea of a Yiddish future. I looked at literary source materials of these women, the poetry, short stories, and the novels, and I really looked at how they used the environment to navigate some racial and urban changes that they experienced between the 1925 into the 1950s. So that meant I was looking at urban planning documents and redlining districts in Boyle Heights, looking at changes in residential patterns from Jewish residents, and ultimately looking at Yiddish intellectual currents of the early 20th century to really understand how the Yiddish Cultural Club understood itself in its present moment. And I think using these methodologies from other historical subfields can better help us better understand and analyze the myriad ways American Jews have engaged with their Americanness and their Jewishness. While it's hardly an intervention to say the environment and nature have played a prominent role in the Jewish zeitgeist from biblical times to the founding of the state of Israel, I believe we should probe this relationship more, especially in the diaspora, because of the varied experiences. By analyzing not just Jewish cultural production, but also the environmental forces that constrain and even enable greater freedom for Jewish cultural reproduction, we can more fully examine the other non-human forces that shape this history. Jewish Yiddishists in LA are in conversation with not other just minorities and majorities and understanding their own place within an imagined fantasy past, as Dr. Luce has put it previously. But they're also in conversation with the environment and how that allows for certain freedom and flexibility, but also constrains their ideas and visions. So what is this geographical difference? In the early 20th century, Los Angeles by population alone was not the focal point of American Jewish life. Previous Jewish immigrants have established trading networks and built economic enterprises here. But these new Jewish immigrants that come in the early 1900s to the 1920s are primarily Russian Jewish immigrants who speak Yiddish and are living and settling in the neighborhood of Boyle Heights. Historians have dubbed this the Lower East Side, as we've said before, but this was really a melting pot neighborhood. And as you can see here, I also have a Hollenbeck Junior High School photo. It's a bulletin. And at the bottom here, we can see both Japanese, or all three, Japanese, Yiddish, and Spanish, which I just think really encapsulates the moment of this neighborhood and the multicultural diversity within it. Between the 1900s and the 1920s, several other Yiddish institutions emerged, the Arbeiter Rings, the Volksschule movement, several independent writers groups and their short-lived literary journals as well. But I primarily focus on the Yiddish Cultural Club, which was established in 1926. Early from its inception, its members understood that for their specific idea of a Yiddish future to work, that political and religious differences could cause schisms within organizations. We see it in Los Angeles, we see it in New York, and a key factor of the Los Angeles Yiddish Cultural Club's longevity was its nonpartisan approach. Isaac Friedlands, a co-founder and longtime editor of the club, reaffirmed the importance of the club's nonpartisan nature in the first issue of Heshbon's quote, saying, "The LA Yiddish Cultural Club was, and I hope will not continue to be, right, socialist, and Zionist, and not left communist as it has until now. The Cultural Club will conduct its nonpartisan cultural activity, helping and supporting all that is Yiddish, national, and cultural, helping raise the level of Yiddish culture, and being loyal to the interests of the Jewish folk masses in whatever country they may be." Ultimately, the YCC understood in some respects it could not limit its membership's political affiliations or religious affiliations. And this selective openness not only allowed various ideologies to participate, but also constraints, as we have seen with Shipra Weiss. I've looked at her poem California as well as a rebuttal to the Yiddish Cultural Club. But this flexibility allowed some women of middle class, elite level more flexibility and having their work published and receiving credit for that. The residential patterns of the Yiddish Cultural Club also reflect the residential patterns of Jews in Boyle Heights. It, in the beginning in the 1920s, resides in Boyle Heights, but as more Jews leave the neighborhood and acculturate into other more wealthy suburban enclaves of Los Angeles, the Yiddish Cultural Club itself, pictured here, moves as well. So, women's literary labor, and the reproduction of culture. One of the most important ways the Yiddish Cultural Club supported its local Yiddish members was through its literary journal Heshbon, which translates to reckoning. This literary space was created for women and others to publish their work and to contribute to the reproduction of Yiddish culture in Los Angeles. It continued in 2007. It's all digitized. I highly recommend looking at it. It's a really interesting and neat source material. But it reflects both the varied local experience of Los Angeles Jewish writers, but also, I think, a transnational approach or perspective. Earlier attempts of journals include Merev and Pacific, which are locally specific and do not last past the 1930s due to economic reasons. But Heshbon in the post-war period really sticks. And I think that indicates in this post-war period, post-war of the Holocaust, Los Angeles Yiddishists are shifting their focus to transnational issues and understanding where they see themselves and their group playing a role for the Yiddish future. Many of the women I analyze in my work, Shipra Weiss, Brooke Cudley, and Esther Shoemaker-Hirschman. Shipra is a communist, and as Dr. Luce has shown in her own work, is kind of an outsider in this. Brooke Cudley is also, she stays in Boyle Heights and has a really interesting poem titled Freeways that really tries to conceptualize these urban changes that are happening to her neighborhood. And Esther Shoemaker-Hirschman is the wife of Peretz Hirschman. So she's has more wealth and access and fame than these other ones. And she's really employing this image of Los Angeles as this place of regenerate sunshine and work and leisure, excuse me. So women are able to access and publish their own short stories through this literary scene. They're also conducting behind the scenes labor, as Judy has showed, of doing clerical and secretarial work that makes these organizations run. And they're really, really focused on fundraising. They are doing local level book committees and basically supporting local writers. Here we have a picture of the cultural club. It's mixed gendered. We see a lot of women and men. Mr. Friedland is standing back at the right here. And then Cecilia Zuckerman in the second from the right here. She is the only executive member that is a woman during this period. And I cannot find, to my knowledge, of what her position was other than executive member. She's not listed as an editor at all. So I make the assumption that there's some clerical positions and work that she is completing here. Here we have the 1951 issue and some of the women's divisions and articles and authors and what they're publishing. I think this difference in publishing strategies also sheds light on the gendered aspects of these Jewish experiences. It's very much so a 1950s gendered binary. Women are doing a lot of clerical and back end work. But I also think this is showing how women are being able to adapt to these new roles and these new publishing spheres and using their grassroots connections to really get their work published. So in addition to publishing their short stories and their articles, women are participating in a very active, vibrant publishing scene. Small book committees are supported by other Yiddishists and are helping women writers promote and sell their works. While this is not a highly profitable endeavor, It shows that unlike New York City, where there's a much more top-down approach to publishing, Los Angeles in this early period of the 1920s to the 1950s are really focused on grassroots level publishing. Approximately 92 Yiddish books are published between this period. Oh, excuse me. And 13 of them are published by women, but this number does grow if you extend the timeline from 1920 to around 1980. While not a lot, I think if we look at the level, the population size and the small size of dedicated Yiddishists, we can also see comparable levels of women navigating these avenues. Reading circles also were prominent and provided Yiddish people access to Yiddish books, engaging with local authors, and helping women improve their Yiddish skills. Sima Goldberg, as you can see here, she establishes the first reading circle with the YCC in 1951, and she, quote, the effort for the reason for these clubs is to promote our language and our spiritual cultural treasures, to acquaint ourselves with Jewish history, and to spin further the thread of prophetical strivings for the socially correct foundation that makes possible a better order, in all ways to enhance the dignity of the Yiddish book. Through these Yiddish cultural activities and the Yiddish Cultural Club as a foundational nexus point, I argue that Los Angeles Yiddish publishing offered Jewish women more opportunities to publish their work and to receive literary credit. In conclusion, I think my case study of the Los Angeles Yiddish Cultural Club is a one specific distinct vision of the Yiddish future, but it reveals two important facts or situations. How the Western environment shaped the Yiddish Club, and through these unique patterns of growth, women found a way to receive credit for their labor. These forces built on one another to create a brief moment for Yiddish cultural relevance and continuity in Los Angeles. And through their emphasis on local writers and the publication of their works, along with many other performances like theatrical performances, book clubs, and hosting international Yiddish authors and cultural activists, the YCC found a place to flourish in Los Angeles. And although this oasis does not last and the surrounding environment has since changed, this effort to sustain Yiddish culture in the 1950s points to a historical continuation of wrestling with what the Yiddish future looks like and making it their own. Thank you.